Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here. Thursday, September 11th. Remind y'all to never forget once again. Right now, though, we're talking about Travis Hunter, Jaguars rookie, second overall pick. Ever heard of him? He obviously a player playing both sides of the ball for the Jaguars, playing wide receiver, playing cornerback, Heisman Trophy winner. Y'all don't need all that stuff. You know about him. But Travis Hunter, we're going to kind of review what he did in week one and talk about what to expect from him moving forward. And then towards the end, we'll also talk a little bit about Tuten, who, in my opinion, is the rookie on the Jags that has the second to third most impact potentially in week 2 and beyond against the Cincinnati Bengals. Really, Tuten and his running back room mate, his rookie classmate, LeQuint Allen. So we're going to get into it. Really appreciate y'all being here. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. So the question is, will Travis Hunter play more in week 2? He ended up with 6 catches on 8 targets for the Jaguars. 1 drop, 33 yards, I believe it was, 6 defensive snaps, which is obviously an underwhelming number, 6 total defensive snaps. He was on the field for 64% of the offensive snaps and less than 10% of the defensive snaps. On offense, I think there's plenty to take away, and nothing really surprised me all that much. They targeted him early, often. A lot of it was short, quick hitting routes from the slot, kind of choice routes where he can decide whether to break in, break out, towards the center of the field or towards the sideline. Again, 24% target share. I expect his usage to expand moving forward on offense, but I still am expecting him to be primarily a guy that they feed the ball to in these easy situations, get the ball in his hands and then let him work. I think as he gets more comfortable, you can definitely see him on more downfield stuff. The one time that they kind of took a shot that was a little bit deeper, and it wasn't even a deep shot, it was like an intermediate throw. Lawrence and Hunter couldn't quite hook up. Really, it should have been a catch. It wasn't a perfect throw by Trevor, but it should have been a catch. It was a drop by Travis Hunter, but still, I mean, overall, good performance on offense. They didn't need him to be anything more than he was, which was basically a keep the offense on schedule, move the chains type of guy for them in week 1 on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they really didn't need him at all, even though they were dealing with Tedero McMillan. T-Mac was really the only teeth to the Panthers offense. The Panthers were struggling to run the ball. They were struggling to get the ball to anybody not named Tedero McMillan, and T-Mac really did a lot of his work late in the game when the hay was in the barn, so to speak. So they were a much better team than the Panthers. They were better coached. They were more talented. They didn't need Travis Hunter to be the player that you draft with the second overall pick in hopes of him being a dominant player on both sides of the ball. They didn't need him to be that in game 1, which is good. Right? He got his feet wet in the NFL, had a pretty good game offensively, was effective, had 6 reps defensively, so he got into the game a little bit. Again, dipped his toes in the water, so to speak. Will he play more in week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals, a Cincinnati Bengals team that has offensive firepower? Obviously, they struggled last week against the Browns. Will he play more on both sides? I think he will. I do. There's a couple reasons. First, in your first game, you were not too far removed from missing about 10 days of training camp with an upper body injury. So not only was it his first game, but he also hadn't had the full allotment of practice time. So I think those two things factored into his playing time. I also think the fact that it was an easy matchup in week 1 and they just didn't really need him on defense all that much or offense all that much late in the game, that by virtue of you being in an uncompetitive ball game, you're just not going to utilize him as much because you don't need to. You want to save him for the big moments, for the big games, for the big halves of football throughout the season, in which you did not have one, really, against the Panthers in week 1. And Liam Cohen was asked about this. He said the plan is to ramp it up. Quote, likely it'll be an uptick. It's more so going into week 1, it was okay. We know that it's going to be not a ton on defense. The goal is to increase and continue to increase. It just so happens that we're playing Cincinnati with 2 good wideouts this week. So he understands the fact that Travis Hunter probably does give them a better opportunity, not necessarily to like shut down T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I don't think he expects to be able to shut down T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for a full game, although the Browns did their best job at that last week. I think it's about being able to make plays, being able to bounce back, being able to compete consistently on the defensive side of the ball. He gives them a better opportunity, in my opinion, to do that than having a Jarian Jones out there consistently. Now, do I think it's going to suddenly flip and he's not going to be on the offensive side of the ball as much as he is the defensive side of the ball? I don't think that, because as much as you want him out there trying to slow down T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, obviously, you also want him on your offensive side of the ball to be able to make sure not only are you keeping up if you need to keep up, but you're keeping your foot on the gas on offense. You have other offensive weapons. I think after 1 week, you would probably say you feel better about your other offensive weapons than you do about whoever's out there on the field at cornerback, not named Tyson Campbell or Jordan Lewis. So, yeah, I could understand the argument to have him out there on the defensive side of the ball more than the offensive side of the ball this week. I still don't think that's going to happen, just because, again, he is their starting slot receiver. And he was their most targeted receiver last week. More targets than Brian Thomas Jr. in game number 1. Now, some of that has to do with the fact that the Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence connection wasn't really very strong last week. But I still just think that you're going to see him about the same amount on offense, 65, 70%. Probably ramp up, defense. Again, it was less than 10%. Maybe you're looking at, depending on the game script as well, right? Like if the Jaguars don't need him in the second half as much, you probably won't see like a massive uptick. But I could see anywhere from like the 15 to 20% range of snaps on defense, which if it's, similar amount as last week, I think they had like 66 defensive snaps, something like that. 66 times 0.2, maybe like 15 to 20 tops would be my guess. We don't know exactly, though, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And Liam Cohen has talked about that a little bit. James Gladstone talked about it a good bit. Just teams won't know how they're going to deploy Travis Hunter week to week. And the Jags, they ran a lot of zone defense last week, no surprise. Zone defense, we're giving our corners an opportunity to read what's happening in front of them. Read and react. Safeties as well, linebackers too. Travis Hunter is as good as it gets when it comes to jumping routes. Tyson Campbell's pretty good at jumping routes. You saw Eric Murray doing that. You saw Dewey. You saw Jordan Lewis. All those guys can jump routes. So it'll be fascinating to see like how they match up. But I do think Travis Hunter is going to have a bigger role this week in all likelihood. Unless the Jaguars get out to a good start and the Bengals really struggle, which is possible. The Bengals are winless under Zach Taylor in week 2 of the regular season. They've been very bad overall in September of regular season games. They barely beat a Browns team that does have a good defense, but really an offense that is fairly toothless, right? So they might need him more in this game. They might need him to have a bigger impact in this game. If the Bengals get going, they're going to need him to play make, to hunt on the defensive side of the ball within the structure of the defense, but they are going to need him to hunt. If things are going how they did last week, though, as I mentioned, I I don't think that they're going to have to utilize him as much. But I also would say, even if things are going how they did last week, I don't think they'll take their foot off the gas as much as they did in the second half. And they didn't do it from an intensity standpoint, but they were trying to get out of that game. It's like, we've proven what we need to prove. Let's have some ball possession offense, take time off the clock, and get out of here with a W. And that's exactly what they did. But I think if you're winning by a couple touchdowns against the Bengals, it's a different formula to win the game, because I don't think you feel like you can just be conservative, for lack of a better word, in your play calling. You have to keep pushing it, because they're a team that can come back and come back quickly. Now, as far as those running backs, with Tank Bigsby being gone, I do think you'll see Bashal Tuten more. Travis Etienne is obviously still the starter, but you look at the runners' share last week, I should say, excuse me. Bashal Tuten had 4 total snaps. LeQuint Allen had 9. Now, does that mean LeQuint Allen is now the RB2 and Bashal Tuten's RB3? No. When Bashal Tuten was on the field, he got 3 carries. When LeQuint Allen was on the field, it was mostly for passing downs. 6 of his 9 snaps were passing down snaps. Bashal Tuten was in there to run the ball more. LeQuint Allen was in there to pass protect and be a receiver out of the backfield more. That's just what it is. That's their roles in this offense. So I do think you look at Bashal Tuten having 4 total snaps last week, Tank Bigsby having 14, and Travis Etienne having 40. I don't expect Travis Etienne's snap share to change all that much. What I do expect is most of that 14 snaps for Tank Bigsby to go to Bashal Tuten. And overall, it will be game script dependent on that, right? If the Jaguars get into a game script where they're just having to drop back and pass the football, you'll probably see more LeQuint Allen. But I think that in a normal game where you're able to run the ball and you don't feel like you just have to throw the ball, Bashal Tuten will get a lot of that Tank Bigsby workload that you saw last week. And Tank Bigsby had 6 carries. Bashal had 3, so you could be getting close to 10 carries, almost close to double-digit carries potentially for Bashal Tuten in a neutral game script. We will see exactly how that plays out, but that's kind of my expectation for it. But bottom line, Travis Hunter will continue to ramp up. I think he will play more this week, even if the game script is similar to last week. I still expect to see him play a little bit more, get an uptick on both sides of the ball, and have an impact, make plays. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.